What if I told you that the difference between people who achieve extraordinary things and those who stay stuck isn't talent, luck, or even opportunity? What if the real difference is simply their ability to force their brain to do hard things when their brain desperately wants to do easy things? Right now, as you listen to this, your brain is already looking for an escape. It's scanning for distractions, making excuses, or telling you that you'll apply this information later when you feel more motivated. This is not your fault. This is biology. Your brain is wired to avoid difficulty, seek comfort, and maintain the status quo. But here's what most people don't realize. This wiring can be overridden. The ultra-successful, the people who seem to have unlimited willpower and discipline, they're not superhuman. They've simply learned how to hack their brain's operating system. They've discovered how to reprogram their mind to crave challenge instead of comfort, to seek difficulty instead of ease. And by the time you finish this audiobook, you'll know exactly how to do the same. This isn't about motivation. Motivation is temporary, unreliable, and frankly, useless for sustained success. This is about creating a systematic approach that forces your brain to execute, regardless of how you feel. You're about to learn the neuroscience behind resistance, the psychology of execution, and most importantly, the specific techniques that will transform your mind from your greatest obstacle into your most powerful weapon. Because here's the truth. Everything you want in life exists on the other side of hard things. The question is, will you force your brain to go there? Chapter 1. The willpower myth and why it's destroying your potential. Let me destroy a lie that's been holding you back your entire life. You've been told that successful people have more willpower than you, that they possess some superhuman ability to resist temptation and push through difficulty. This is completely false, and believing it is the reason you're stuck. Willpower is not a muscle that some people have more of. It's not a character trait that you either possess or you don't. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day, and successful people understand this. They don't rely on willpower to do hard things. They rely on systems that eliminate the need for willpower entirely. Here's what really happens when you try to use willpower to change your life. You wake up motivated, full of determination to stick to your goals. You resist the urge to check your phone. You eat healthy. You work out. You stay focused on important tasks. For a few hours, maybe even a few days, you feel unstoppable. But then, something happens. You face a difficult decision at work. You deal with stress at home. You encounter an unexpected challenge. And suddenly, your willpower tank is empty. The cookies in the kitchen become irresistible. The workout gets skipped. The important project gets postponed. You tell yourself you'll start again tomorrow. But tomorrow brings its own challenges, its own stress, its own willpower demands, and the cycle continues. This is called decision fatigue, and it's been proven in laboratory after laboratory. Every time your brain has to make a decision, especially a difficult one, it uses up mental energy. By the end of the day, you're running on fumes, which is exactly when your brain defaults to its easiest, most automatic behaviors. This is why you can eat perfectly all day and then demolish a bag of chips at night. This is why you can be productive all morning and then waste 3 hours scrolling social media in the evening. The people who seem to have unlimited discipline aren't fighting this system. They're working with it. They understand that their brain has limited decision-making capacity, so they eliminate decisions wherever possible. They automate their behaviors, create environments that support their goals, and design systems that make success inevitable without requiring constant mental effort. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, not because he lacked fashion sense, but because he understood that every small decision depletes willpower for bigger, more important decisions. Barack Obama, during his presidency, only wore gray or blue suits for the same reason. These people eliminated trivial decisions to preserve mental energy for what matters. But here's the deeper truth about willpower that will change everything for you. Your brain doesn't actually want to conserve willpower for important things. It wants to avoid difficult things altogether. When you tell yourself you're too tired to work out, too stressed to eat healthy, or too overwhelmed to focus on your goals, your brain isn't protecting your willpower. It's protecting your comfort zone. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the solution is to build more willpower, to develop more self-control, to somehow become the type of person who never struggles with difficult tasks. But the real solution is to stop relying on willpower at all. The real solution is to create conditions where hard things become automatic, where your environment forces the right behaviors, where doing the difficult thing becomes easier than doing the easy thing. Consider this. You don't need willpower to brush your teeth, check your email, or drive to work. These behaviors are automatic because they've been repeated so many times that they require no conscious effort. The secret to forcing your brain to do hard things is to make hard things as automatic as brushing your teeth. This requires understanding that your brain operates on two systems. System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional. It's the part of your brain that makes you reach for your phone when you're bored, skip the gym when you're tired, and choose Netflix over reading. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. It's the part that sets goals, makes plans, and knows what you should do. Most people try to force System 2 to override System 1 through sheer mental effort. But System 1 is stronger, faster, and it never gets tired. System 2 gets exhausted after a few hours of use. This is why relying on conscious willpower is a losing strategy. The winning strategy is to program System 1 to work for you instead of against you. You do this by creating habits, environments, and systems that make the right choice the automatic choice. You eliminate the need for willpower by removing the decision entirely. This is the foundation of everything we'll discuss in this audiobook. You're not going to become a more disciplined person by forcing yourself to have more willpower. You're going to become a more disciplined person by making discipline automatic. You're going to force your brain to do hard things by making hard things the path of least resistance. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Resistance and How Your Brain Sabotages Success. Your brain is not designed for your success. It's designed for your survival. And there's a massive difference between these two objectives that explains why achieving anything meaningful feels like swimming upstream. For hundreds of thousands of years, human survival depended on avoiding unnecessary risks, conserving energy, and staying within the safety of the known. The humans who ventured too far from the tribe, who tried new things, who pushed themselves beyond their limits, often didn't survive to pass on their genes. The ones who survived were cautious, conservative, and comfort-seeking. This is the operating system you've inherited. Your brain is essentially a survival machine that's been programmed to keep you safe. which means keeping you exactly where you are. Every time you try to do something difficult, challenging, or new, your brain interprets this as a potential threat to your survival and activates its resistance mechanisms. This resistance doesn't feel like fear. It feels like perfectly reasonable thoughts and emotions. It feels like, I'm too tired right now. It feels like, this isn't the right time. It feels like, maybe I should do more research first. It feels like, I'll start fresh on Monday. Your brain has become incredibly sophisticated at creating logical-sounding excuses for avoiding anything that feels uncomfortable or uncertain. But here's what's really happening in your brain when you try to do something hard. The moment you even think about doing something challenging, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, starts scanning for potential threats. It doesn't matter that going to the gym is good for you, or that working on your business will improve your life, or that having a difficult conversation will strengthen your relationship. All your amygdala knows is that these things are unfamiliar, and unfamiliar equals dangerous. When your amygdala detects a potential threat, it triggers your sympathetic nervous system, flooding your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This creates the physical sensation of anxiety, tension, and discomfort that you feel when you're about to do something difficult. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, and every fiber of your being wants to retreat back to safety. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain that sets goals and makes plans, is trying to override this alarm system. But here's the problem. The prefrontal cortex requires enormous amounts of energy to function, while the amygdala operates automatically and effortlessly. In a battle between reason and emotion, emotion wins almost every time, especially when you're stressed, tired, or overwhelmed. This is why you can know exactly what you should do, why you should do it, and how to do it, but still find yourself unable to take action. It's not a lack of knowledge or motivation. It's a neurological conflict between the part of your brain that wants to grow and the part that wants to survive. But here's where it gets even more sophisticated. Your brain doesn't just resist hard things in the moment. It learns to predict when hard things are coming and creates resistance in advance. This is why you feel dread on Sunday night before a challenging week at work. This is why you feel anxiety before important presentations or difficult conversations. Your brain is essentially training you to avoid challenging situations by making you feel bad just thinking about them. This anticipatory resistance is incredibly powerful because it operates below the level of conscious awareness. You're not choosing to feel anxious about your workout. You're not deciding to feel overwhelmed by your goals. These feelings arise automatically because your brain has learned to associate challenge with discomfort. The good news is that this same learning mechanism can be reprogrammed to work in your favor. Your brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to form new neural connections throughout your life, means that you can literally rewire your resistance patterns. You can train your brain to associate challenge with reward instead of threat. This process begins with understanding the specific resistance patterns your brain uses to keep you stuck. The first pattern is procrastination, which your brain uses to avoid anything that feels difficult or uncertain. Instead of saying, I don't want to do this, your brain says, I'll do it later. This creates the illusion that you're still committed to your goal while allowing you to avoid the discomfort of action. The second pattern is perfectionism, which your brain uses to avoid the risk of failure or judgment. Instead of taking imperfect action, your brain convinces you that you need more time, more information, or better conditions before you can begin. This keeps you in an endless state of preparation without ever moving toward execution. The third pattern is rationalization, which your brain uses to justify giving up on your goals. When the going gets tough, your brain provides perfectly logical reasons why this goal isn't really important, why this isn't the right time, or why you should focus on something else instead. This allows you to abandon challenging pursuits while maintaining your self-image as someone who makes rational decisions. Understanding these patterns is the first step to overriding them. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need to actively reprogram your brain's response to challenge, and this requires specific techniques that work with your neurology instead of against it. The key is to gradually expose your brain to increasing levels of difficulty while simultaneously rewarding it for pushing through discomfort. This process, called progressive adaptation, literally rewires your neural pathways to associate challenge with positive outcomes instead of threats. Chapter 3. The Force System. Reprogramming your mental operating system. Now that you understand why your brain resists hard things, it's time to learn how to reprogram it to seek them out instead. This isn't about overpowering your brain's resistance through force of will. It's about systematically changing the underlying programming that creates resistance in the first place. Think of your brain like a computer running outdated software. Right now, your mental operating system is running on survival mode, constantly scanning for threats and seeking the path of least resistance. But just like you can update software to improve performance and add new features, you can update your mental programming to support challenge-seeking behavior instead of comfort-seeking behavior. This reprogramming process involves three core components: trigger modification, response replacement, and reward restructuring. Together, these create what I call the force system, a comprehensive approach that makes your brain automatically choose difficulty over ease. Trigger modification is the process of changing your environment and routines to eliminate resistance triggers while amplifying execution triggers. Your brain responds to environmental cues constantly, often below the level of conscious awareness. The sight of your phone triggers the urge to check social media. The comfort of your bed triggers the desire to stay lying down. The sight of unhealthy food triggers cravings. But environmental triggers can work in your favor just as powerfully as they work against you. The sight of workout clothes laid out the night before triggers exercise motivation. A clean, organized workspace triggers focus and productivity. Books visible in your environment trigger learning and growth mindset. The key is to systematically audit your environment and identify every trigger that either supports or undermines your goals. Then you eliminate the negative triggers and amplify the positive ones. This isn't about willpower or self-control. It's about environmental design that makes the right choice the obvious choice. For example, if you want to work out consistently, you don't rely on motivation to get to the gym. You lay out your workout clothes the night before. Pack your gym bag and put it by the door. Set your alarm across the room so you have to get up to turn it off, and keep a water bottle and pre-workout supplement ready on your nightstand. You've created a chain of environmental triggers that naturally leads to exercise without requiring any difficult decisions. Response replacement is the process of consciously choosing new responses to the internal triggers that normally create resistance. When your brain generates thoughts like, "I don't feel like it," "This is too hard," or "I'll do it later." Instead of negotiating with these thoughts, you implement predetermined response patterns that bypass resistance entirely. This requires developing what I call response scripts, predetermined mental responses to common resistance patterns. When your brain says, "I don't feel like working out," your response script might be, "Feelings are temporary. Actions create results." When your brain says, "This project is too overwhelming," your response script might be, "I only need to focus on the next small step." The key to effective response scripts is that they redirect your attention away from feelings and toward actions. Your brain generates resistance through emotional reasoning, making you feel like avoiding challenge is the right choice. Response scripts bypass emotional reasoning by focusing your attention on predetermined behaviors regardless of how you feel. But the most powerful component of the force system is reward restructuring, which involves consciously training your brain to derive pleasure from difficulty instead of comfort. Your current reward system, shaped by evolution and reinforced by modern society, gives you the biggest dopamine hits from easy pleasures: social media, junk food, entertainment, and other forms of instant gratification. This creates a neurological problem. Your brain is wired to repeat behaviors that generate dopamine, which means it's constantly seeking easy rewards and avoiding activities that don't provide immediate pleasure. Since most meaningful goals require delayed gratification, your brain naturally resists working toward them. Reward restructuring solves this problem by artificially creating dopamine hits for challenging behaviors. You do this through immediate micro-rewards that train your brain to associate difficulty with pleasure. Every time you do something hard, you immediately give yourself a small reward that generates positive feelings. This might mean celebrating for 30 seconds after completing a workout, treating yourself to something small after finishing a difficult task, or simply acknowledging your effort with positive self-talk. The key is that the reward comes immediately after the challenging behavior, creating a direct neurological connection between difficulty and pleasure. Over time, this rewiring process becomes automatic. Your brain starts to anticipate the reward that comes after challenging behaviors, which generates motivation to seek out challenges instead of avoiding them. What once felt difficult and unpleasant starts to feel exciting and rewarding. The force system also incorporates what neuroscientists call implementation intentions, which are if-then plans that automate your responses to specific situations. Instead of relying on in-the-moment decision-making, which is when your brain is most likely to choose comfort over challenge, you predetermined your actions for common scenarios. For example, if I feel like skipping my workout, then I will put on my workout clothes and do just 5 minutes of exercise. If I feel overwhelmed by a project, then I will work on it for just 10 minutes. If I want to check social media during work time, then I will write down 3 important tasks I need to complete first. Implementation intentions work because they transfer control from your emotional brain to your rational brain. When you encounter a resistance trigger, instead of having to make a difficult decision in the moment, you simply execute your predetermined plan. This eliminates the internal negotiation that usually leads to choosing the easy path. The final element of the force system is progressive loading, which gradually increases the difficulty of challenges to build your brain's tolerance for discomfort. just like physical training involves progressively heavier weights to build strength. Mental training involves progressively harder challenges to build psychological resilience. You start with challenges that are difficult but manageable, then gradually increase the difficulty as your brain adapts. This might mean starting with 5-minute workouts and building up to hour-long sessions, or starting with small, uncomfortable conversations and building up to major, difficult discussions. Progressive loading works because it allows your brain to adapt to increased challenge without triggering overwhelming resistance. Each level of difficulty becomes your new baseline, preparing you for the next level. This creates a compound effect where your capacity for handling difficulty grows exponentially over time. Chapter 4. Environmental Programming. Designing your world for automatic execution. Your environment is constantly programming your behavior, whether you realize it or not. Every object you see, every sound you hear, every space you occupy is sending signals to your brain about what actions to take. The problem is that most people live in environments that are programmed for comfort, distraction, and resistance, which means they're fighting an uphill battle every time they try to do something challenging. But here's what successful people understand that others don't. You can reverse engineer your environment to automatically trigger the behaviors you want. Instead of relying on willpower to overcome a resistant environment, you can create an environment that makes resistance nearly impossible and execution nearly inevitable. This isn't about having perfect conditions or expensive equipment. This is about understanding the psychological principles of environmental design and applying them strategically to eliminate friction for positive behaviors while creating friction for negative behaviors. The first principle is visual priming, which leverages the fact that your brain processes visual information faster than any other type of input. What you see in your environment immediately influences your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, often without conscious awareness. This is why seeing junk food makes you crave junk food, why seeing your phone makes you want to check it, and why seeing a messy space makes you feel overwhelmed. But visual priming can work powerfully in your favor when you design it intentionally. If you want to read more, you place books in highly visible locations throughout your living space. If you want to exercise consistently, you make your workout equipment impossible to ignore. If you want to eat healthier, you make healthy foods the most visible options in your kitchen. The key is to make positive visual cues unavoidable while minimizing or eliminating negative visual cues. This means your phone should be out of sight when you're trying to focus. Your workout clothes should be the first thing you see when you wake up. Your workspace should contain only items that support productive work. The second principle is friction engineering, which involves making positive behaviors easier to start while making negative behaviors harder to start. Your brain naturally gravitates toward the path of least resistance, so you can influence your behavior by controlling which path requires less effort. This might mean preparing healthy meals in advance, so eating well requires less effort than ordering junk food. It might mean deleting social media apps from your phone, so checking them requires more effort than doing productive work. It might mean setting up your workspace the night before, so starting important tasks requires less effort than procrastinating. Friction engineering is incredibly powerful because it works with your brain's natural tendencies instead of against them. Instead of forcing yourself to choose the harder option, you engineer your environment so that the right choice becomes the easier choice. The third principle is context stacking, which involves using existing strong habits as triggers for new behaviors you want to develop. Your brain already has automatic routines that require no willpower or decision-making. By attaching new behaviors to these existing patterns, you can make them automatic as well. For example, if you want to develop a meditation practice, you might stack it onto your existing morning coffee routine. After you pour your coffee, you immediately sit down for 5 minutes of meditation before drinking it. If you want to exercise consistently, you might stack it onto your existing evening routine of changing out of work clothes. Context stacking works because your brain uses environmental and behavioral cues to trigger automatic responses. When you consistently perform behavior B after behavior A, your brain starts to automatically anticipate behavior B whenever behavior A occurs. This creates a psychological momentum that makes the new behavior feel natural and inevitable. The fourth principle is environmental restriction, which involves physically removing the option to engage in behaviors that undermine your goals. This is different from relying on willpower to avoid temptations. This is about making temptations literally unavailable, so your brain can't choose them even if it wants to. If you want to eliminate mindless snacking, you remove all junk food from your living space. If you want to stop wasting time on social media, you delete the apps and use website blockers during focus time. If you want to stop staying up too late watching television, you remove the television from your bedroom. Environmental restriction is incredibly effective because it eliminates the decision-making process entirely. Your brain can't choose what isn't available. This allows you to make one difficult decision, changing your environment, that eliminates hundreds of smaller decisions that would otherwise require willpower. The fifth principle is social environmental design, which recognizes that the people in your environment have enormous influence over your behavior and mindset. If you're surrounded by people who avoid challenges, make excuses, and settle for mediocrity, their behaviors will become your norm. If you're surrounded by people who embrace difficulty, take action, and push for excellence, their behaviors will elevate your standards. This means you need to be intentional about who you spend time with, both in person and virtually. The conversations you have, the content you consume, and the communities you participate in are all shaping your beliefs about what's normal and possible. Social environmental design might mean joining groups or communities where challenging behavior is the norm. It might mean finding an accountability partner who expects you to follow through on your commitments. It might mean consuming content from people who model the mindset and behaviors you want to develop. The final principle is temporal environmental design, which involves structuring your time to support challenging behaviors. Most people leave their schedule completely open, which means their brain defaults to the easiest available option at any given moment. But you can eliminate this decision-making by predetermined when challenging behaviors will occur. This means scheduling your workouts like important meetings that can't be moved. It means blocking time for important projects and treating that time as sacred. It means creating non-negotiable routines that happen at the same time every day, regardless of how you feel or what else is going on. Temporal environmental design works because it removes the question of when from challenging behaviors. Your brain doesn't have to decide when to work out, when to work on important projects, or when to engage in growth activities. These decisions have already been made, which eliminates one of the biggest sources of resistance. Chapter 5. Mental Leverage Techniques. Multiplying your psychological power. Most people approach difficult challenges by trying to push through them with raw mental effort. They grit their teeth, clench their fists, and attempt to overpower their resistance through sheer force of will. This approach occasionally works in the short term, but it's exhausting, unsustainable, and completely unnecessary. What if instead of pushing harder, you could pull easier? What if instead of fighting your brain's resistance, you could redirect its power toward your goals? This is the principle behind mental leverage. Using psychological techniques that multiply your effectiveness while requiring less mental energy. Think about physical leverage. A small person using a lever can move objects that would be impossible to move with muscle alone. The lever doesn't make them stronger. It amplifies the strength they already have. Mental leverage works the same way. It amplifies your existing motivation, focus, and determination by working with your brain's natural mechanisms instead of against them. The first mental leverage technique is pain-pleasure repositioning, which involves consciously rewiring your brain's association between difficulty and discomfort. Right now, your brain has learned to associate challenging activities with negative feelings, stress, anxiety, fatigue, and frustration. This creates automatic resistance every time you encounter something difficult. But you can systematically retrain your brain to associate challenge with positive feelings, excitement, pride, growth, and achievement. This requires consistently focusing on the positive aspects of difficult experiences while minimizing attention to the negative aspects. When you're doing something hard, instead of thinking, "This is exhausting," or "I want this to be over," you consciously redirect your attention to thoughts like, "I'm getting stronger," or "This is where growth happens." Instead of focusing on the discomfort you're feeling, you focus on the progress you're making. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is neural reprogramming based on the scientific principle that your brain strengthens whatever patterns you repeatedly activate. By consistently associating difficulty with positive meaning, you literally rewire your neural pathways to generate enthusiasm for challenges instead of resistance. The second technique is future self-visualization, which leverages your brain's powerful visual processing system to create motivation for present-moment action. Your brain struggles with abstract concepts like future success, but responds powerfully to concrete visual images. When you can vividly see and feel the person you'll become by doing hard things, your brain treats that future reality as achievable and desirable. Effective future self-visualization involves all your senses, not just visual imagery. You don't just see yourself achieving your goals. You hear the sounds, feel the emotions, and experience the physical sensations of success. You visualize specific scenes, walking into meetings with confidence, having energy and vitality, receiving recognition for your achievements, enjoying the lifestyle your hard work has created. The key is to make these visualizations as detailed and emotionally engaging as possible. Your brain needs to believe that this future is real and attainable. When it does, it automatically starts making decisions that move you toward that future instead of away from it. The third technique is identity-based leverage, which works by aligning your actions with a stronger version of your identity. Instead of relying on external motivation or willpower, you tap into the powerful psychological drive for self-consistency. When your brain believes you are a certain type of person, it automatically generates behaviors that match that identity. This requires consciously choosing an identity that naturally does hard things, then consistently acting in alignment with that identity until it becomes your new default sense of self. Instead of saying, "I want to get in shape," you adopt the identity, "I am someone who takes care of their body." Instead of saying, "I should work harder," you adopt the identity, "I am someone who executes on their commitments." The more you act in alignment with this stronger identity, the more real it becomes in your mind. Eventually, doing hard things stops feeling like something you're forcing yourself to do and starts feeling like something you naturally do because of who you are. The fourth technique is systems thinking leverage, which involves focusing on the processes that create results instead of the results themselves. Your brain gets overwhelmed when it focuses on big, distant outcomes, but it functions optimally when it focuses on small, immediate actions. Instead of thinking, "I need to lose 50 pounds, you think, "I need to make good food choices at my next meal." Instead of thinking, "I need to build a successful business," you think, "I need to complete the next task on my action plan." This redirects your mental energy toward actionable steps instead of abstract outcomes. Systems thinking is leveraging because it breaks overwhelming goals into manageable actions while maintaining forward progress. Your brain can handle small challenges much more easily than large ones, but small challenges consistently applied create massive results over time. The fifth technique is social leverage, which harnesses the powerful human drive for social connection and approval. Your brain is wired to care deeply about how others perceive you, and this drive can be redirected to support challenging behaviors instead of comfortable ones. This might involve making public commitments to your goals. So, your brain's desire to maintain your reputation motivates consistent action. It might involve joining communities where challenging behavior is the norm, so your brain's desire to fit in drives you toward difficult activities. It might involve finding accountability partners who expect you to follow through on your commitments. Social leverage is powerful because it taps into motivational systems that are stronger than individual willpower. When your brain knows that others are watching and expecting certain behaviors, it automatically generates the energy to meet those expectations. The sixth technique is temporal leverage, which involves using your brain's natural rhythms and energy patterns to maximize your effectiveness during challenging activities. Instead of trying to maintain consistent performance throughout the day, you identify when your mental energy is highest and schedule your most difficult tasks during those peak periods. For most people, mental energy is highest in the morning and gradually depletes throughout the day. This means difficult cognitive tasks, important decisions, and challenging projects should be scheduled as early as possible. Later in the day, when mental energy is lower, you focus on easier, more routine activities. Temporal leverage multiplies your effectiveness by working with your natural biology instead of against it. Instead of forcing yourself to do hard things when your brain is tired and resistant, you do them when your brain is fresh and capable. The final technique is compound leverage, which involves stacking multiple leverage techniques together to create exponentially greater effectiveness. Instead of using one technique at a time, you combine visual, identity, social, and temporal leverage into a comprehensive system that makes challenging behaviors nearly automatic. For example, you might start your day with future self-visualization to generate motivation. Schedule your most important work during your peak energy hours. Work in a space designed to minimize distractions, and check in with an accountability partner to maintain social pressure. Each technique amplifies the others, creating a psychological environment where doing hard things becomes the natural, obvious choice. Chapter 6. The Execution Engine. Building systems that force action. Most people live in a constant state of preparation without ever moving to execution. They read books, watch tutorials, make plans, and gather information, convincing themselves that they're making progress. But preparation without execution is just procrastination in disguise. The highest achievers understand this fundamental truth. Execution is everything else is just mental masturbation. The reason most people never execute is because they rely on motivation and willpower to bridge the gap between planning and doing. But motivation is unreliable, and willpower depletes quickly under stress. What you need instead is an execution engine, a systematic approach that makes action automatic, regardless of how you feel or what obstacles you encounter. The execution engine operates on three core principles: immediate action bias, progressive momentum, and environmental forcing. Together, these create an unstoppable system that turns intention into action without requiring heroic amounts of self-control. Immediate action bias means defaulting to action instead of analysis when faced with any decision or opportunity. Instead of asking, "Should I do this?" you ask, "How quickly can I start?" Instead of spending time perfecting your plan, you take imperfect action and improve as you go. This breaks the paralysis that comes from overthinking and gets you into momentum immediately. The 5-minute rule is the most powerful immediate action tool you can use. When your brain resists starting something difficult, you commit to doing it for just 5 minutes. This bypasses resistance because 5 minutes feels manageable to your brain. But once you start, momentum naturally carries you forward. The hardest part of any task is starting, and the 5-minute rule eliminates that barrier completely. Progressive momentum works by creating a chain of small wins that builds psychological energy for bigger challenges. Instead of trying to go from 0 to 100 immediately, you start with easy actions that create forward movement, then gradually increase the difficulty. This trains your brain to associate execution with positive feelings instead of struggle and resistance. Environmental forcing involves designing your environment so that the right actions become inevitable, while wrong actions become difficult or impossible. If you want to work out consistently, you lay out your workout clothes the night before and remove all barriers to getting to the gym. If you want to eat healthily, you eliminate junk food from your living space and prepare healthy meals in advance. But the most sophisticated aspect of the execution engine is the implementation intention protocol. This involves creating if-then plans for every possible resistance scenario you might encounter. Instead of hoping you'll make good decisions in the moment, you predetermined your responses to common obstacles. For example, if I feel like skipping my workout, then I will put on my workout clothes and do just 10 minutes of exercise. If I feel overwhelmed by a project, then I will work on it for exactly 15 minutes. If I want to check social media during work time, then I will write down 3 important tasks I need to complete first. These implementation intentions work because they transfer control from your emotional brain to your rational brain. When resistance arises, instead of having to fight through it with willpower, you simply execute your predetermined plan. This eliminates the internal negotiation that usually leads to choosing the easy path. The execution engine also requires what I call the no negotiation policy. This means identifying certain behaviors as completely non-negotiable, regardless of circumstances. These become iron rules that you never break under any conditions. For example, I never skip 2 days of exercise in a row. I always complete my most important task before checking email. I never make major decisions when I'm emotional. Non-negotiable rules work because they eliminate decision-making entirely. Your brain can't debate or rationalize its way out of something that's been predetermined as non-negotiable. This preserves mental energy for more important decisions while ensuring that critical behaviors happen automatically. Finally, the execution engine includes accountability triggers that create external pressure to follow through on your commitments. This might involve making public commitments that put your reputation on the line, working with accountability partners who check on your progress, or creating financial consequences for failing to execute. The key is making the cost of not executing higher than the discomfort of executing. When your brain knows that failing to take action will result in real consequences, it automatically generates the energy to overcome resistance and follow through. Chapter 7. Deep Focus Mastery. Training your brain for laser concentration. In a world designed to destroy your attention, the ability to focus deeply on important tasks has become a superpower that separates high achievers from everyone else. While most people's brains are scattered across multiple distractions, jumping from task to task without ever achieving meaningful depth, those who master deep focus can accomplish more in a few hours than others accomplish in entire days. But here's what most people don't understand about focus. It's not a natural ability that some people have and others don't. Focus is a trainable skill that becomes stronger with practice and weaker with neglect. Every time you resist a distraction and maintain concentration on an important task, you strengthen your focus muscle. Every time you give in to distraction, you weaken it. The modern world has created an epidemic of attention deficit that goes far beyond clinical conditions. The average person checks their phone over 150 times per day and can focus on a single task for less than 11 minutes before being interrupted or interrupting themselves. Your brain has been trained to crave constant stimulation and immediate gratification, making sustained focus feel almost impossible. This creates a devastating cycle where the harder your task, the more your brain seeks distraction, and the more you give in to distraction, the weaker your focus becomes. Breaking this cycle requires understanding exactly how attention works and implementing specific techniques that retrain your brain to sustain concentration for extended periods. Deep focus operates in states, not bursts. Your brain needs time to eliminate surface-level thoughts and reach the deeper levels of concentration where complex thinking and creative insights occur. This typically takes 15 to 20 minutes of sustained attention before you reach peak cognitive performance. But most people never experience this state because they interrupt themselves long before reaching it. The first step to developing deep focus is eliminating external distractions completely. Your phone should be in another room, not just silent. Your workspace should contain only items related to your current task. All notifications should be disabled. Any potential interruption should be removed or blocked. This isn't about having perfect self-control. It's about creating an environment where distractions literally cannot reach you. But external distractions are only half the problem. Internal distractions, the constant stream of thoughts, worries, and random mental chatter that arises during focus attempts, are even more challenging to manage. This is where the attention anchor technique becomes essential. An attention anchor is a predetermined focal point that you return to whenever your mind wanders. This might be your breathing, a specific phrase you repeat, or a physical sensation you maintain awareness of. When you notice your attention has drifted, you don't fight the distraction or judge yourself. You simply return to your anchor and continue working. This process of noticing distraction and returning to focus is like mental weightlifting. Each time you bring your attention back, you strengthen your concentration muscle. The goal isn't to eliminate mind-wandering completely. It's to notice it quickly and redirect your attention back to your intended focus. The progressive focus training protocol involves gradually increasing your concentration periods while maintaining high-quality attention. You start with periods that feel manageable, perhaps 15 or 20 minutes. Then slowly extend them as your focus strength improves. The key is maintaining intensity throughout the entire period rather than trying to focus for longer periods at lower quality. During deep focus sessions, your brain should feel slightly strained, like a muscle being challenged during exercise. If focus feels effortless, you're probably not pushing hard enough. If it feels overwhelming, you're trying to do too much too soon. The optimal challenge level creates manageable difficulty that builds strength without causing burnout. Advanced focus training includes what neuroscientists call cognitive load management. This involves learning to distinguish between different types of mental effort and allocating your cognitive resources strategically. Decision-making, creative thinking, and analytical problem-solving all require different types of mental energy and should be scheduled when your cognitive load is optimal for that specific task. The concept of attention residue explains why switching between tasks destroys focus quality. When you move from one task to another, part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task, reducing your cognitive capacity for the new task. This is why checking email or social media during focus sessions is so damaging. It leaves mental residue that contaminated your concentration for much longer than the distraction itself. Deep focus also requires managing your energy, not just your attention. Your brain's ability to concentrate fluctuates throughout the day based on factors like sleep, nutrition, stress levels, and natural circadian rhythms. Identifying your peak focus periods and protecting them for your most important work can dramatically increase your cognitive output. Most people experience peak mental clarity in the morning, typically within the first few hours of waking. This is when your brain is most capable of sustained concentration and complex thinking. But this prime cognitive time is often wasted on low-value activities like checking email, browsing social media, or attending non-essential meetings. Chapter 8. The Habit Architecture. Programming Automatic Success Behaviors. The difference between people who achieve sustained success and those who experience temporary bursts of progress comes down to one thing: habits. Everything you are today is the result of habits you've repeated consistently over time. Everything you'll become tomorrow will be determined by the habits you choose to build starting today. But most people approach habit formation completely backwards. They try to change their entire life overnight, relying on motivation and willpower to sustain behaviors that feel difficult and unnatural. This approach fails because it fights against how your brain actually creates automatic behaviors. Your brain forms habits through a neurological loop called the habit circuit. Cue, routine, reward. Every habit starts with a trigger that signals your brain to initiate an automatic behavior, followed by the behavior itself, followed by some form of reward that reinforces the pattern. Understanding this loop is essential because it shows you exactly how to engineer habits that stick permanently. The key to successful habit formation isn't starting with behaviors you want to do. It's starting with behaviors that feel almost impossible to fail at. This principle, called minimum effective dose, involves making your initial habit so small and easy that your brain can't generate resistance to it. If you want to start exercising, don't commit to hour-long workouts. Commit to putting on your workout clothes. If you want to start reading, don't commit to reading entire books. Commit to reading one page. If you want to start meditating, don't commit to 20-minute sessions. Commit to sitting quietly for 60 seconds. This approach works because it bypasses your brain's resistance mechanisms completely. Your brain can't generate significant opposition to behaviors that require almost no effort. But once you start the behavior, momentum naturally carries you forward, often leading you to do more than your minimum commitment. The minimum effective dose also trains your brain to associate the new habit with success rather than struggle. Every time you complete your tiny habit, you create positive reinforcement that makes the behavior more likely to repeat. This builds psychological momentum that makes the habit feel increasingly natural and automatic. Habit stacking is the most powerful technique for installing new behaviors permanently. Instead of trying to create habits from scratch, you attach them to existing strong habits that already occur automatically. Your brain uses existing behavioral patterns as triggers for new behaviors, creating an inevitable chain of actions. For example, if you already drink coffee every morning, you can stack a new habit immediately after. After I pour my coffee, I will write in my journal for 5 minutes. If you already brush your teeth before bed, you can add, after I brush my teeth, I will read for 10 minutes. The key to effective habit stacking is choosing trigger habits that are extremely consistent and placing your new habit immediately after the trigger. This creates a behavioral chain where completing the first habit automatically prompts the second habit without requiring conscious decision-making. Environmental design plays a crucial role in habit automation. Your environment is constantly cueing behaviors, whether you realize it or not. The sight of your phone triggers the urge to check it. The sight of snack foods triggers eating impulses. The sight of your bed triggers sleepiness. But you can engineer these environmental cues to support positive habits instead of undermining them. This means making good habits obvious and bad habits invisible. If you want to drink more water, keep water bottles visible throughout your living space. If you want to exercise consistently, keep your workout clothes where you can't miss them. If you want to read more, place books in multiple locations where you spend time. Conversely, you want to hide environmental cues that trigger undesirable behaviors. If you want to eat less junk food, remove it from your kitchen entirely. If you want to reduce phone usage, keep it in a drawer or another room during focus time. If you want to wake up earlier, move your alarm clock across the room so you have to get up to turn it off. The habit tracking system provides the reward component that reinforces your behavioral loop. Your brain needs immediate feedback to strengthen neural pathways associated with new behaviors. Without clear evidence of progress, motivation fades and habits weaken. The most effective tracking system is visual and immediate. This could be marking an X on a calendar every day you complete your habit. using a habit tracking app that provides instant feedback, or simply keeping a visible scorecard that shows your consistency over time. The psychological power of tracking comes from the compound effect of small wins. Each time you mark your habit as complete, you get a tiny hit of dopamine that reinforces the behavior. Over time, maintaining your streak becomes rewarding in itself, creating additional motivation to continue the habit even when you don't feel like doing it. But the ultimate goal of habit formation isn't external tracking. It's identity change. The most sustainable habits are those that align with your sense of self. When you see yourself as someone who exercises regularly, eating healthy foods, or constantly learning new skills, the associated behaviors feel natural and automatic rather than forced. This requires shifting your self-talk from outcome-based to identity-based language. Instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," you say, "I am someone who takes care of their body." Instead of saying, "I want to be successful," you say, "I am someone who executes on their commitments." This subtle shift programs your subconscious mind to generate behaviors that match your identity. Chapter 9. Mental Resilience Training. Building unbreakable psychological strength. Mental toughness isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through systematic training. Just like physical strength develops through progressive resistance, mental resilience develops through progressively challenging your comfort zone and teaching your brain to function optimally under pressure. Most people avoid discomfort at all costs, which creates a devastating paradox. The more you avoid difficult situations, the weaker your ability to handle them becomes. Your brain interprets avoidance as evidence that whatever you're avoiding is truly dangerous, which increases your anxiety and resistance the next time you encounter something challenging. But when you systematically expose yourself to manageable levels of discomfort and stress, you train your brain to respond with confidence instead of fear. This process, called stress inoculation, literally rewires your nervous system to remain calm and focused when facing difficult situations. The foundation of mental resilience is understanding the difference between stress and distress. Stress is your body's natural response to challenge, designed to enhance your performance and prepare you for action. Distress occurs when stress becomes overwhelming or prolonged beyond your capacity to handle it effectively. The goal of resilience training isn't to eliminate stress, but to increase your capacity to handle higher levels of stress before reaching distress. This expanded stress tolerance allows you to remain calm and effective in situations that would overwhelm others, giving you a significant advantage in both personal and professional contexts. Cold exposure training is one of the most powerful methods for building stress tolerance quickly. Taking cold showers, ice baths, or simply exposing yourself to uncomfortable temperatures trains your nervous system to remain calm when facing physical discomfort. This controlled stress exposure teaches your brain that discomfort doesn't equal danger and that you can function effectively even when feeling uncomfortable. The key to effective cold exposure is progressive adaptation. You start with temperatures and durations that create manageable discomfort, then gradually increase the challenge as your tolerance improves. The mental training happens when you consciously choose to stay calm and breathe deeply while experiencing the discomfort, teaching your brain to override its natural panic response. Cognitive resilience training involves deliberately putting yourself in situations that challenge your mental comfort zone. This might mean having difficult conversations you've been avoiding, taking on projects that stretch your abilities, or placing yourself in social situations that create mild anxiety. The crucial element is maintaining conscious control over your mental state during these challenges. Instead of allowing stress to trigger automatic reactions, you practice responding with deliberate calm and strategic thinking. This trains your brain to default to rational problem-solving instead of emotional reactivity when facing difficult situations. Negative visualization is an ancient technique that builds resilience by mentally rehearsing challenging scenarios before they occur. By imagining how you would handle potential setbacks, failures, or difficult situations, you prepare your mind to respond effectively if these situations actually arise. This isn't pessimistic thinking, it's strategic preparation. When you've mentally rehearsed your response to various challenges, your brain doesn't interpret unexpected difficulties as overwhelming threats. Instead, it recognizes them as manageable situations you're prepared to handle. The practice involves visualizing specific challenging scenarios in detail, then mentally walking through how you would respond with calm confidence. You see yourself maintaining emotional control, thinking clearly under pressure, and taking effective action despite the difficulty of the situation. Emotional regulation training focuses on developing conscious control over your emotional responses to stress and challenge. Most people experience emotions as automatic reactions they can't control. But neuroscience has proven that you can learn to influence your emotional state through specific mental techniques. The key is understanding that emotions are generated by your thoughts and interpretations, not by external circumstances themselves. Two people can experience identical situations and have completely different emotional responses based on how they interpret what's happening. This means you can change your emotional experience by changing how you think about challenging situations. Instead of viewing setbacks as failures, you can interpret them as learning opportunities. Instead of seeing stress as something negative, you can view it as evidence that you're growing and pushing your limits. The reframing technique involves consciously choosing more empowering interpretations of difficult situations. When you encounter a challenge, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this helping me grow stronger?" This simple shift in perspective changes your entire emotional experience of the situation. Recovery protocols are essential for maintaining high performance under sustained pressure. Just like physical training requires rest periods for muscle growth, mental resilience training requires recovery periods for psychological adaptation and growth. This includes both active recovery, where you engage in activities that restore mental energy, and passive recovery, where you allow your mind to rest completely. Active recovery might include activities like light exercise, creative pursuits, or social connection. Passive recovery involves activities like meditation, sleep, or simply sitting quietly without stimulation. The key is balancing challenge with recovery so that you're constantly building resilience without burning out. Too much challenge without adequate recovery leads to breakdown. Too much recovery without adequate challenge leads to weakness. The optimal balance keeps you growing steadily while maintaining long-term sustainability. Chapter 10. The Persistence Protocol. Never quitting until you win. The ultimate test of your mental training isn't how you perform when things go well. It's whether you can persist when everything goes wrong. Persistence is the defining characteristic that separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who give up just before their breakthrough. But persistence isn't about grinding through suffering indefinitely. It's about strategic endurance combined with intelligent adaptation. Most people quit not because their goal becomes impossible, but because their current approach becomes unsustainable. They mistake temporary setbacks for permanent failures, interpret difficulties as signs they're on the wrong path, and abandon their objectives just when persistence would pay off most. True persistence requires what I call intelligent stubbornness, the ability to remain committed to your ultimate objective while being completely flexible about your methods. This means never giving up on what you want while constantly experimenting with how you'll achieve it. The persistence protocol begins with outcome independence, which involves detaching your emotional state from short-term results while maintaining complete commitment to long-term success. When you're outcome independent, temporary failures don't discourage you because you understand they're part of the process, not evidence that you should quit. This psychological stance allows you to maintain consistent effort regardless of whether you're winning or losing in the moment. Your motivation comes from the process of pursuit itself, not from achieving specific milestones by particular deadlines. This creates sustainable energy that can endure setbacks and obstacles that would derail someone who depends on external validation for their motivation. Setback reframing is a crucial persistence skill that involves interpreting failures and obstacles as valuable information rather than evidence of inadequacy. Every setback contains data about what doesn't work, bringing you closer to discovering what does work. When you view failures as research rather than rejection, they become fuel for persistence rather than reasons to quit. The key is developing what psychologists call an experimental mindset, where every action is a test designed to gather information about the most effective path forward. This removes the emotional charge from failure because failed experiments aren't personal rejections. They're simply data points that guide your next iteration. This mindset shift is crucial because it allows you to fail fast and fail cheap while maintaining momentum toward your ultimate objective. Instead of investing massive amounts of time and energy in approaches that might not work, you test ideas quickly, learn from the results, and adjust your strategy based on real feedback. The minimum viable persistence principle involves identifying the smallest amount of daily effort that keeps you moving forward during difficult periods. When motivation is low and obstacles are high, instead of trying to maintain peak performance, you commit to a minimal daily action that preserves your momentum. This might mean doing one push-up when you can't face a full workout, writing one paragraph when you can't complete entire chapters, or making one business call when you can't handle a full day of sales activity. The specific action matters less than maintaining the psychological pattern of forward movement. Minimum viable persistence works because it prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that leads to quitting. When you can't do everything perfectly, you can still do something meaningful. This keeps your identity as someone who persists intact and often leads to doing more than your minimum once you start. Strategic patience involves understanding that meaningful results often require more time than initially expected, but also knowing when persistence becomes counterproductive. This balance requires regularly assessing whether your current approach is making measurable progress, even if that progress is slower than hoped. The key metrics for strategic patience are leading indicators rather than lagging indicators. Leading indicators show that you're moving in the right direction even before final results appear. These might include increased skills, expanded networks, improved systems, or growing knowledge that will eventually translate into observable success. Lagging indicators are the final outcomes you're working toward, but they often show results long after the actions that created them. By focusing on leading indicators, you can maintain confidence in your progress even when final results aren't yet visible. The compound persistence principle recognizes that effort invested in difficult periods pays exponentially higher returns than effort invested during easy periods. When others are quitting, reducing effort, or avoiding challenges, your continued persistence gains you disproportionate ground because you're competing against fewer people who are trying at the same intensity. This creates accelerated progress during periods that would normally slow down results. Your persistence during others' weakness becomes your greatest competitive advantage and often leads to breakthrough moments that wouldn't have been possible during easier periods. Environmental persistence support involves creating systems and structures that make quitting more difficult than continuing. This might include public commitments that put your reputation on the line, financial investments that create cost to quitting, or social accountability systems that expect your continued effort. The goal is making persistence the path of least resistance by creating friction around quitting. When stopping requires effort and explanation, while continuing requires only follow-through, your brain naturally chooses persistence even when motivation is low. The final element of the persistence protocol is milestone celebration, which involves acknowledging progress and effort regardless of whether ultimate objectives have been achieved. This creates positive reinforcement for persistent behavior itself, not just for successful outcomes. Regular celebration of persistence maintains the psychological energy needed for long-term endurance, while building an identity around being someone who never gives up. This identity becomes self-reinforcing, making persistence feel natural and automatic, rather than forced and difficult. Chapter 11. Advanced Mental Programming. Breaking through your ultimate limitations. There comes a point in your mental development where standard techniques aren't enough. You've built basic discipline, developed good habits, and can handle moderate challenges. But to reach elite levels of performance, you need to reprogram the deepest layers of your subconscious mind, where your most fundamental limitations hide. These aren't the obvious limitations that you can see and address consciously. These are the invisible barriers that operate below your awareness, secretly sabotaging your efforts, even when you think you're giving everything you have. They're the reason you might work incredibly hard but still hit invisible ceilings. Why you can push yourself to certain levels but mysteriously can't break through to the next tier of performance. Advanced mental programming involves identifying and systematically dismantling these hidden limitations while installing new programming that supports unlimited growth. This requires understanding how your deepest beliefs were formed and using specific techniques that can override programming that has been reinforced for decades. The first level of advanced programming targets your identity-based limitations. Most people underestimate how powerfully their sense of self constrains their behavior. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with consistency, your brain will unconsciously create situations that prove this identity correct. If you believe you're not the type of person who achieves extraordinary success, you'll unconsciously sabotage opportunities that would contradict this belief. Identity reprogramming requires systematically acting in ways that contradict your current self-image while simultaneously feeding your mind evidence of your new identity. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is strategic identity construction through deliberate action and selective attention. The process begins with choosing an identity that naturally does the hard things you want to do. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who struggles with discipline, you adopt the identity of someone who thrives on challenge. Instead of seeing yourself as unlucky or disadvantaged, you adopt the identity of someone who creates their own opportunities through relentless effort. But choosing a new identity isn't enough. You must then act in alignment with this identity consistently, especially when it feels unnatural or forced. Every time you act in accordance with your chosen identity, you create evidence that supports it. Every time you act contrary to your old identity, you weaken its psychological hold on you. The second level of advanced programming addresses your relationship with discomfort and uncertainty. Most people have been conditioned to interpret discomfort as a signal to stop or retreat, but elite performers have learned to reinterpret these same sensations as signals that they're growing and pushing into new territory. This requires reconditioning your nervous system's response to stress and challenge. Instead of experiencing anxiety when facing difficult tasks, you can train your brain to generate excitement. Instead of feeling dread when approaching uncomfortable situations, you can condition yourself to feel anticipation for growth opportunities. The neurotechnology for this reprogramming involves repeatedly pairing challenging experiences with positive emotional states through specific breathing techniques, visualization protocols, and cognitive reframing exercises. Over time, your brain learns to automatically generate positive emotions when encountering difficulty, instead of resistance and avoidance. The third level targets your belief systems about what's possible for someone like you. These limiting beliefs often sound reasonable and are reinforced by your social environment, making them particularly difficult to identify and change. They might include beliefs like, "People from my background don't achieve that level of success," or "I'm just not naturally disciplined," or "I don't have the right connections or resources." These beliefs create what psychologists call learned helplessness, where you unconsciously avoid pursuing certain goals because your programming tells you they're impossible. This causes you to never develop the capabilities that would actually make them possible, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of limitation. Belief system reprogramming requires exposing yourself to evidence that contradicts your limiting beliefs while simultaneously taking actions that prove new possibilities. This might mean studying people who achieved success despite similar backgrounds, deliberately placing yourself in situations that challenge your assumptions, and consistently taking actions that would only make sense if your limiting beliefs were false. The fourth level of advanced programming involves rewiring your relationship with failure and setbacks. Most people have been conditioned to interpret failure as evidence of their inadequacy, which creates massive resistance to taking risks or pushing boundaries. But elite performers have learned to interpret failure as valuable information that guides them toward better strategies. This requires developing what researchers call anti-fragility, where you don't just tolerate setbacks but actually become stronger because of them. Every failure becomes fuel for improvement rather than evidence of limitation. Every setback becomes information that makes your next attempt more likely to succeed. The programming process involves deliberately seeking out challenging situations where failure is likely, then practicing your response to setbacks until it becomes automatic. You learn to immediately ask empowering questions when things go wrong. What can this teach me? How is this making me stronger? What opportunity does this create? The fifth level targets your programming around effort and struggle. Most people have been taught that having to work hard for something means they're not naturally gifted, or that success isn't meant for them. This creates resistance to the sustained effort that's required for extraordinary achievement. Elite performers have reprogrammed themselves to interpret struggle as evidence that they're pursuing something worthwhile. They've learned to derive satisfaction from the process of overcoming obstacles rather than only from achieving final outcomes. This makes them capable of sustaining effort for much longer periods without burning out or losing motivation. This reprogramming involves consciously celebrating moments of struggle and effort rather than only celebrating results. You train your brain to generate positive emotions from the process of pushing your limits, working through difficulties, and maintaining consistency despite challenges. The final level of advanced programming involves transcending the need for external validation or motivation. Most people's behavior is ultimately driven by seeking approval, avoiding criticism, or proving their worth to others. This creates psychological dependency that limits their ability to pursue unconventional paths or maintain effort when external support is lacking. True mental freedom requires developing internal validation systems that are independent of external circumstances or other people's opinions. This means deriving satisfaction from your own standards of excellence, measuring progress against your own previous performance, and maintaining motivation based on your internal vision rather than external pressures. This programming creates what researchers call intrinsic motivation, which is far more sustainable and powerful than any external motivator. When your drive comes from internal sources, you become capable of extraordinary persistence and can pursue goals that others consider impossible or impractical. Chapter 12. Elite Performance Protocols. Operating at maximum human potential. Elite performance isn't just about working harder or being more disciplined than others. It's about operating your mind and body at levels that most people never access, using protocols and techniques that optimize every aspect of your cognitive and physical capabilities. This is how the top 1% of performers in any field consistently output results that seem impossible to everyone else. The foundation of elite performance is understanding that your brain and body operate as an integrated system, and optimizing one without the other leaves massive potential unrealized. Elite performers don't just train their minds or just train their bodies. They systematically optimize their entire biological and psychological operating system to function at peak capacity. The first protocol involves optimizing your brain's physical hardware through strategic stress exposure and recovery cycles. Your brain, like any high-performance system, becomes stronger and more efficient when challenged appropriately and given adequate recovery time. Most people either never challenge their brain sufficiently or challenge it constantly without allowing for proper recovery. Elite mental training involves deliberate cognitive stress through activities that push your brain beyond its comfort zone. Complex problem-solving under time pressure, learning new skills that require intense concentration, or maintaining focus during physically demanding activities. This stress must be followed by periods of complete cognitive rest, where your brain can consolidate improvements and prepare for the next challenge. The stress recovery cycle is precisely calibrated. Too much stress without adequate recovery leads to cognitive overload and declining performance. Too little stress allows your brain to become complacent and lose its edge. Elite performers monitor their cognitive state constantly and adjust their training intensity to maintain optimal challenge without pushing into breakdown territory. The second protocol focuses on maximizing your brain's processing speed and efficiency through attention training. Most people operate with what researchers call attention deficit, where their mental energy is scattered across multiple competing priorities, dramatically reducing their cognitive effectiveness. Elite attention training involves developing what neuroscientists call sustained selective attention, the ability to maintain intense focus on chosen targets while filtering out all irrelevant information. This requires specific practices that strengthen your brain's filtering mechanisms and increase your ability to maintain concentration under challenging conditions. Advanced attention training includes dual task protocols, where you practice maintaining primary task focus while managing secondary demands. Distraction resistance training, where you deliberately expose yourself to interruptions while maintaining concentration, and attention switching drills, where you practice rapidly moving focus between different targets without losing efficiency. The third protocol involves optimizing your brain's creative and problem-solving capabilities through systematic exposure to novel challenges. Most people's thinking becomes rigid and predictable because they repeatedly solve similar problems using familiar approaches. Elite performers continuously expose their brains to new types of challenges that require innovative thinking and creative problem-solving. This involves deliberately seeking problems that don't have obvious solutions, studying subjects outside your area of expertise, and regularly placing yourself in situations where your existing knowledge and approaches aren't sufficient. This forces your brain to develop new neural pathways and thinking patterns that enhance your overall cognitive flexibility. Creative training also includes constraint-based exercises, where you artificially limit your available resources or approaches, forcing your brain to develop more efficient and innovative solutions. This might involve solving problems with artificial time constraints, limited information, or restricted methods, training your brain to function effectively under any conditions. The fourth protocol addresses energy management and sustainable high performance. Elite performers understand that peak performance isn't about operating at maximum intensity constantly. It's about strategically managing your energy to deliver maximum output when it matters most, while maintaining long-term sustainability. This requires developing sophisticated energy monitoring systems that track your physical, mental, and emotional energy levels throughout different time periods and activities. Elite performers know exactly when they're operating at peak capacity and schedule their most important work during these windows. Energy optimization also involves strategic depletion and recovery cycles. Just like physical training involves challenging your body to stimulate adaptation, followed by recovery to allow growth, mental training involves deliberately depleting your cognitive resources, followed by specific recovery protocols that enhance your baseline capacity. The fifth protocol focuses on decision-making optimization under pressure and uncertainty. Elite performers must often make crucial decisions with incomplete information under high-pressure conditions. This requires training your brain to function optimally when stress hormones are elevated and time constraints are severe. Decision training involves progressively challenging scenarios where you must make important choices with limited time and information. This might include business simulations, competitive games, or real-world challenges where the stakes matter and mistakes have consequences. The key is developing what researchers call decision confidence under uncertainty, where you can make high-quality decisions quickly without getting paralyzed by analyzing endless possibilities. This requires training your intuitive decision-making systems while maintaining conscious oversight of the reasoning process. The sixth protocol involves developing what elite performers call competitive mindset, the psychological state that allows you to perform at your highest level when facing skilled opposition or high-stakes situations. This goes beyond normal confidence or motivation. It's a specific mental state that enhances all your capabilities when the pressure is highest. Competitive mindset training involves regularly placing yourself in challenging competitions or high-stakes situations where your performance directly affects outcomes that matter to you. This conditions your nervous system to respond to pressure with enhanced focus and energy rather than anxiety and hesitation. This training also includes visualization protocols where you mentally rehearse performing at your peak under various challenging scenarios. Your brain develops familiarity with high-pressure performance, making it feel natural when you encounter these situations in reality. The final protocol addresses long-term performance, sustainability, and continuous improvement. Elite performers don't just reach peak performance once. They maintain and continuously enhance their capabilities over extended periods. This requires sophisticated systems for monitoring performance trends, identifying areas for improvement, and implementing training modifications. Sustainable elite performance involves developing what researchers call adaptive expertise, where you continuously evolve your capabilities to meet new challenges rather than simply repeating previously successful approaches. This keeps you at the cutting edge of performance rather than allowing your skills to become stagnant or obsolete. Chapter 13. Pressure Mastery. Thriving when stakes are highest. The ultimate test of your mental training isn't how well you perform when conditions are perfect. It's whether you can access your highest capabilities when pressure is crushing. Stakes are enormous, and failure would be devastating. This is where most people's training fails them completely. And it's exactly where elite performers separate themselves from everyone else. Pressure has a unique ability to expose weaknesses in your mental programming that remain hidden during normal conditions. Techniques that work perfectly during practice sessions often crumble when real consequences are on the line. Confidence that feels unshakable during low-stakes situations can evaporate when facing situations that truly matter. This is because pressure doesn't just add difficulty to existing challenges. It fundamentally changes how your brain operates. Under high pressure, your nervous system shifts into survival mode, flooding your body with stress hormones that impair complex thinking, reduce creativity, and create tunnel vision that prevents you from accessing your full range of capabilities. But here's what separates elite performers from everyone else. They've learned to use pressure as a performance enhancer rather than a performance destroyer. Instead of being weakened by high-stakes situations, they're energized by them. Instead of being intimidated by consequences, they're motivated by them. This transformation requires understanding exactly how pressure affects your physiology and psychology, then implementing specific training protocols that reprogram your nervous system to respond optimally when stakes are highest. The first level of pressure mastery involves developing what researchers call stress inoculation. This means systematically exposing yourself to progressively challenging pressure situations while maintaining optimal performance. Training your nervous system to remain calm and effective when stress levels would normally cause breakdown. Stress inoculation begins with controlled exposure to manageable pressure situations, then gradually increases the stakes and consequences as your tolerance improves. This might start with public speaking to small groups and progress to presenting to large audiences or hostile environments. It might begin with competitive games with friends and progress to high-stakes competitions with serious consequences. The key is ensuring that you maintain high-quality performance throughout each pressure exposure. If you allow yourself to perform poorly under pressure, you're training your brain that pressure causes performance degradation. But if you consistently perform well despite pressure, you train your brain that pressure enhances rather than impairs your capabilities. The second level involves developing what elite performers call pressure reframing, the ability to consciously reinterpret pressure sensations as excitement and energy rather than anxiety and threat. Your body's physiological response to pressure and excitement are nearly identical. Increased heart rate, elevated adrenaline, and heightened alertness. The difference isn't in what's happening in your body. It's in how your brain interprets these sensations. Most people interpret pressure sensations as signals that something dangerous is happening and they should be afraid. Elite performers interpret identical sensations as signals that something important is happening and they should be energized. This reframing isn't just positive thinking. It requires specific training to override your brain's automatic interpretation patterns. You practice consciously choosing empowering interpretations of pressure sensations until this becomes your automatic response. When you feel your heart racing before an important presentation, instead of thinking, "I'm nervous," you think, "I'm energized." When you feel butterflies before a crucial conversation, instead of interpreting this as anxiety, you recognize it as excitement for the opportunity to demonstrate your capabilities. The third level addresses what researchers call performance focus under pressure. Normal focus techniques often become ineffective under high pressure because stress hormones create mental noise that interferes with concentration. Elite pressure performance requires advanced focus techniques that remain stable even when your nervous system is highly activated. Pressure focus training involves maintaining intense concentration on specific targets while deliberately elevating your stress levels through physical exertion, time pressure, or competitive situations. This trains your brain to filter out stress-induced distractions and maintain clarity despite elevated arousal. Advanced pressure focus includes what military and emergency responders call task fixation, the ability to become completely absorbed in executing critical actions regardless of chaos or danger in your environment. This prevents your brain from being overwhelmed by the magnitude of consequences and keeps your attention locked onto the specific actions that create successful outcomes. The fourth level involves developing emotional regulation under extreme pressure. When stakes are highest, emotions become more intense and can either enhance or destroy your performance depending on how well you can manage them. Fear, anger, excitement, and anxiety all become amplified under pressure, and your ability to channel these emotions productively determines your performance quality. Elite emotional regulation requires understanding that emotions under pressure aren't obstacles to overcome, they're energy sources to harness. Fear can be transformed into laser focus. Anger can be channeled into determination. Excitement can be directed toward optimal performance. The key is learning to direct emotional energy rather than being overwhelmed by it. This training involves deliberately placing yourself in emotionally charged situations while practicing specific regulation techniques. You learn to recognize emotional escalation quickly, intervene with appropriate regulation strategies, and maintain optimal emotional states regardless of external circumstances. The fifth level addresses decision-making under pressure when you must make crucial choices quickly with limited information. Normal decision-making processes that involve careful analysis and deliberation become impossible when time is limited and stakes are high. Elite performers develop rapid decision-making capabilities that maintain high quality even under severe constraints. Pressure decision training involves scenarios where you must make important choices with artificial time limits, incomplete information, and real consequences for poor choices. This trains your brain to access intuitive decision-making systems while maintaining logical oversight of your reasoning process. Advanced pressure decision-making includes what researchers call confident uncertainty, the ability to make decisive choices even when you don't have complete confidence in the outcome. This prevents analysis paralysis that often occurs under pressure when people become frozen by the fear of making wrong decisions. The sixth level involves developing what elite performers call pressure presence, the ability to project calm confidence and maintain your normal personality even when facing intense pressure. Many people become noticeably different under pressure, losing their natural charisma, communication effectiveness, and leadership capabilities. Pressure presence training involves maintaining your authentic personality and communication style while dealing with high-stakes situations. This requires specific techniques for managing nervous system activation that allows your normal personality to remain accessible even when stress levels are elevated. This training also includes developing the ability to make others feel comfortable even when you're operating under intense pressure. Elite performers can maintain their effectiveness while helping their team members perform optimally despite challenging conditions. The final level addresses pressure recovery, the ability to bounce back quickly from high-pressure situations without experiencing prolonged stress effects or performance degradation. Many people can perform adequately under pressure but require extensive recovery time afterward, limiting their ability to handle sustained, challenging periods. Elite pressure recovery involves specific techniques for rapidly down-regulating your nervous system after high-stress situations, preventing the accumulation of stress effects that would impair future performance. This allows you to handle multiple pressure situations in sequence without experiencing cumulative stress damage. Chapter 14. Sustainable Excellence. Building Systems for Lifelong Peak Performance. Most people think about excellence as a destination you reach through temporary, intense effort. They push themselves to achieve a goal, experience some success, then naturally relax and return to previous performance levels. This creates a cycle of short-term achievement, followed by long-term mediocrity, that prevents them from building truly extraordinary capabilities. Elite performers understand that excellence isn't a destination. It's a lifestyle system that must be maintained and continuously improved throughout their entire career. They don't just achieve peak performance occasionally. They operate at consistently high levels while continuously raising their standards and capabilities. This requires fundamentally different thinking about effort, improvement, and success. Instead of viewing peak performance as an unsustainable state that can only be maintained temporarily, elite performers develop systems that make high-level performance feel natural and automatic, rather than forced and exhausting. The foundation of sustainable excellence is understanding the difference between intensity-based performance and systems-based performance. Intensity-based performance relies on pushing yourself harder through motivation, willpower, and temporary inspiration. This approach can create impressive short-term results, but inevitably leads to burnout, inconsistency, and eventual performance decline. Systems-based performance relies on creating environmental, psychological, and behavioral structures that naturally generate high-level performance without requiring heroic amounts of effort or willpower. This approach creates steady, sustainable improvement that compounds over time into extraordinary capabilities. The first component of sustainable excellence is developing what researchers call adaptive competence, the ability to continuously evolve your skills and approaches rather than relying on previously successful methods. Most people reach a certain performance level, then plateau, because they stop learning and growing, continuing to use approaches that worked in the past, even when conditions change. Adaptive competence requires systematic exposure to new challenges that force you to develop new capabilities. This means deliberately seeking situations where your current skills and knowledge aren't sufficient, forcing you to stretch beyond your existing competence zone. This also involves developing meta-learning skills, the ability to learn how to learn more effectively in any domain. Instead of just accumulating knowledge and skills, you develop the underlying capabilities that allow you to master new areas rapidly when circumstances require it. The second component involves creating what elite performers call sustainable intensity, the ability to operate at high performance levels without burning out or experiencing performance degradation over time. This requires understanding your optimal challenge-to-recovery ratio and maintaining it consistently rather than cycling between periods of overexertion and underperformance. Sustainable intensity training involves developing sophisticated self-monitoring systems that track your energy, motivation, and performance quality across different time periods and activities. You learn to recognize early signs of performance decline and intervene with appropriate recovery or intensity adjustments before breakdown occurs. This also requires developing multiple performance modalities so you're not dependent on any single approach or energy source. When one system becomes depleted, you can shift to alternative approaches that maintain high performance while allowing the primary system to recover. The third component addresses what researchers call intrinsic motivation cultivation, developing internal drive systems that remain strong regardless of external circumstances or recognition. Most people's motivation is heavily dependent on external factors like approval, competition, or rewards, making it vulnerable to environmental changes. Intrinsic motivation systems are based on personal values, growth orientation, and meaning-making that remain stable even when external conditions change. This creates sustainable drive that doesn't depend on others' validation or environmental support. Developing intrinsic motivation requires connecting your performance goals to deeper purposes and values that have personal significance beyond external recognition. Your drive comes from alignment with your authentic self, rather than from seeking approval or avoiding criticism. The fourth component involves building what elite performers call compound improvement systems, approaches that create accelerating returns on your development efforts over time. Instead of linear improvement where each hour of effort produces consistent gains, compound systems create exponential improvement where later efforts produce disproportionately larger returns. Compound improvement systems focus on developing foundational capabilities that enhance all other learning and performance areas. This might include cognitive skills like pattern recognition and creative problem-solving, physical capabilities like energy management and stress resilience, or psychological skills like emotional regulation and confidence building. These foundational improvements amplify the effectiveness of all other training and development efforts, creating accelerating returns that make advanced capabilities increasingly accessible. The fifth component addresses sustainable challenge progression, the ability to continuously increase the difficulty of your goals and standards. without overwhelming your capacity or creating unsustainable stress levels. Most people either plateau at comfortable levels or push too hard and burn out, both of which prevent long-term excellence development. Sustainable challenge progression requires calibrating your growth rate to match your adaptation capacity. You increase difficulty at a pace that stimulates continuous improvement without exceeding your recovery and development capabilities. This also involves developing what researchers call challenge immunity, where increased difficulty becomes energizing rather than stressful. You train your nervous system to interpret higher standards and greater challenges as exciting opportunities rather than threatening burdens. The sixth component involves creating environmental and social systems that automatically support high performance rather than requiring constant conscious effort to maintain excellence. Most people rely on willpower to overcome resistant environments, which is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Elite performers design their physical environment, social relationships, and daily structures to naturally promote high-level behavior. They surround themselves with people who expect excellence, create physical spaces that enhance focus and productivity, and build routines that automatically generate optimal performance states. This environmental engineering removes the need to fight against resistant conditions, allowing you to focus your mental energy on improvement and achievement rather than on overcoming environmental obstacles. The final component addresses what elite performers call legacy building, developing capabilities and making contributions that have lasting impact beyond your individual performance. This long-term perspective provides sustainable motivation while ensuring that your excellence development serves purposes larger than personal achievement. Legacy building involves identifying how your developing capabilities can benefit others, contribute to important causes, or advance fields that matter to you. This creates meaning that sustains motivation through difficult periods while connecting your personal development to broader purposes. Chapter 15. The Complete Transformation. Becoming Unstoppable. You've now learned everything necessary to transform your brain from your greatest limitation into your most powerful weapon. But knowledge alone changes nothing. Information without implementation is just entertainment. The difference between those who achieve extraordinary transformation and those who remain stuck, despite knowing what to do, comes down to one thing: the decision to commit completely to becoming a different person. This isn't about making small improvements to your existing personality or adding a few good habits to your current lifestyle. This is about fundamental transformation at the deepest levels of your identity, belief systems, and automatic behavioral patterns. This is about becoming the type of person who naturally does hard things because that's simply who they are. The complete transformation requires understanding that you're not just changing your behaviors, you're literally rewiring your brain's neural pathways, reprogramming your subconscious operating system, and constructing an entirely new sense of self that operates at levels you previously thought were impossible. This transformation happens in stages, each building on the previous, while creating momentum that makes the next level feel natural and inevitable. But the process requires total commitment. You can't partially reprogram your brain or selectively apply these principles. Either you commit completely to becoming a different person, or you remain essentially the same person with slightly improved habits. The first stage of complete transformation is what I call the breaking point, where you definitively reject your old identity and all the limitations it imposed on your potential. This isn't gradual change or slow improvement. This is a conscious decision that your old self, with all its fears, excuses, and limitations, is no longer acceptable. This breaking point often comes from reaching absolute clarity about the cost of staying the same. When you truly understand what remaining unchanged will cost you in terms of missed opportunities, unreached potential, and eventual regret, the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of transformation. At this moment, change stops being something you're trying to do and becomes something you must do. Your old patterns become intolerable rather than comfortable. Your limitations become unacceptable rather than reasonable. Your excuses become disgusting rather than convenient. The second stage involves what researchers call identity integration, where you begin acting consistently with your new identity even when it feels unnatural or forced. This is the most challenging stage because you're operating against decades of conditioning and social expectations while building evidence for a new sense of self. During this stage, you must consistently choose actions that align with your new identity rather than your old patterns, especially when you don't feel like it. Every time you act in accordance with your new identity, you strengthen the neural pathways that support it. Every time you revert to old patterns, you reinforce the programming you're trying to change. This requires what elite performers call behavioral integrity, where your actions match your intentions regardless of how you feel in the moment. You do what you said you would do, when you said you would do it, whether you feel like it or not. This builds unshakable self-trust and confidence while proving to your subconscious mind that you are indeed becoming a different person. The third stage involves automatic excellence, where your new patterns become so deeply ingrained that they require no conscious effort or decision-making. What once required enormous willpower to achieve now happens naturally because it's simply who you are. At this stage, doing hard things doesn't feel hard anymore, because your identity, as someone who embraces challenge, has become completely integrated. Your brain no longer generates resistance to difficult tasks because it recognizes them as natural expressions of your personality rather than threats to your comfort. This automation allows you to operate at consistently high levels, without the mental fatigue that exhausts people who rely on willpower. Your excellence becomes effortless because it's powered by identity rather than effort. The fourth stage involves exponential growth, where your transformed foundation allows you to develop capabilities at rates that were impossible with your previous programming. When your brain is no longer fighting against your goals, when your identity supports rather than sabotages your efforts, when your environment enhances rather than undermines your performance, your growth rate accelerates dramatically. This is where the compound effects of transformation become visible. Each new capability builds on your existing foundation, creating accelerating returns that make advanced achievements increasingly accessible. What once seemed impossible becomes challenging but achievable. What once required enormous effort becomes manageable with focused attention. The fifth stage involves what I call gravitational influence, where your transformation becomes so complete that it naturally influences everyone around you. People begin seeking your advice, modeling your behavior, and raising their own standards because of your example. This isn't about trying to influence others. It's the natural result of operating at a level that demonstrates what's possible. When people see someone consistently doing what they thought was impossible, it expands their sense of what they can achieve. This influence creates positive feedback loops that reinforce your transformation while contributing to others' growth. Your excellence becomes contagious, creating environments where high performance is normal rather than exceptional. The final stage is continuous evolution, where transformation becomes a permanent aspect of your identity rather than a one-time achievement. Instead of reaching a plateau and maintaining it, you develop an insatiable drive for continuous improvement that keeps pushing your capabilities throughout your entire life. At this level, you never become satisfied with your current performance because you're addicted to the process of growth itself. Each achievement becomes a platform for attempting something even more challenging. Each mastered skill becomes the foundation for developing more advanced capabilities. This is where you transcend the need for external motivation entirely. Your drive comes from the joy of pushing limits, the satisfaction of overcoming obstacles, and the excitement of discovering what you're truly capable of achieving. But here's the crucial truth about complete transformation. It starts with a single decision, not the decision to try harder or do better, but the decision to reject your current identity completely and commit to becoming someone entirely different. Right now, as you finish this audiobook, you stand at a crossroads. You can close this experience and return to your old patterns, armed with new information but unchanged in your fundamental nature. Or you can make the decision that everything about how you've been operating is no longer acceptable. You can decide that the person who started listening to this audiobook no longer exists. You can choose to become someone who forces their brain to do hard things, not because they have to, but because that's simply who they are. The techniques, strategies, and protocols you've learned will work, but only if you implement them with complete commitment. Only if you decide that transformation isn't something you're going to try. It's something you're going to do. The choice is yours. But understand this: your brain is waiting for your decision. It's ready to be reprogrammed, rewired, and transformed into the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you will. Everything you want in life exists on the other side of hard things. And now you know exactly how to force your brain to go there. The only question remaining is, will you?